Hello and welcome to Wednesday's Woman's Hour podcast with me, Nikki Beattie. Hello and welcome to Wednesday's programme. This week marks 3 months since the government passed a landmark amendment promising sanctuary to unaccompanied, vulnerable children like the ones you'll hear in our report, the third feature this week from the camps in Calais. And then we'll be discussing the issues faced by the unaccompanied children there. So I'll be asking what's being done to help them and what more could be done. Also, Prom 29 this Saturday, the 6th of August, sees the famously energetic National Youth Orchestra taking their cues from the world of science. Their artistic director, Sarah Alexander, will be telling us more. And the fashion house Dior have finally hired their first female creative director. How important is that? And do the big fashion houses matter anymore? But first, this week we've been looking at the reality of day-to-day life for the women, mother and child migrants and refugees living in the unofficial jungle and official camps in Calais. Today we're focusing on unaccompanied children. A census carried out by the grassroots charity Help Refugees and l'Auberge des Migrants last month estimated that there are over 7,000 refugees living in the camp. Just over 600 of those are unaccompanied children. The youngest they recorded was just 8 years old. Despite the threat of the camp being demolished, they say the numbers are growing. The charities, volunteers and NGOs work round the clock to try and keep the children safe. There are some places they can go, like the Kids Cafe, a big structure built out of plywood and plastic sheeting near one of the entrances to the camp, run by volunteers. When we visited the camp, Sikandar, an Afghan refugee, was cooking, and he showed Catherine Carr the kitchen, where he manages to provide free meals twice a day for the children. A gentle warning here, you may find some of what you hear distressing.
Cooking today rice and meat for kids.
How many kids are you catering for?
Today maybe coming to 65. Now it's all sleeping. Maybe it's coming just half an hour, 1 hour back.
So can you tell me what you've got in your kitchen? Here you've got a bag of...
This is for fast bread for the morning.
So pain au chocolat for the morning in this bag here?
This carrot, ginger, onion, potato.
You a good cook?
You cook, yes, thank you.
A very small boy with a toy guitar watched Sikandar cook and then started to talk to me.
What
does he say?
He said, I'm coming from Iran, Turkey. With somebody coming, he catch me, my money, take it, my phone, take it. Kikosh padarta lanja majshut kidhar?
Ne, da padaram मैंने तालिबान मारा बहुत पुलिसों खलास कर कई पुलिसों वो जंग कर.
He said the Taliban take my father, the army coming, he was take away.
How old is this little boy?
Chan salasti?
Yes.
6 months. 6.
Is he by himself? No.
Yeah.
Alone?
Yeah, kia zakatit.
कई पदारम.
His brother's with him.
What are you doing? My name's Liz Clegg and I set up and manage the unofficial Women and Children's Centre in the jungle in Calais. We hear stories of the smugglers separating children away, forcing separation. People die, obviously, on the journey. And, you know, the boat stories, I mean, if the boat does capsize or stuff goes on, then in the chaos of arriving on the boats, then people again get split up. But some have been sent on their own. There's a lot from Afghanistan that if the father has died, the oldest son needs protecting. It's all they've got. So we've got quite a few cases of children. A 10-year-old child happens to be the oldest son. So they've been sent away for their own protection.
Look, come here. Let's undo a bit of lacing. Yes.
When I first started feeding them, I was shocked that children were starving and we're in northern France. One of the boys who I still see, he's in the UK now and I see him every week. It was like throwing a bone to a starving dog, and I couldn't get the food on the table because they'd fight. I've never seen that in my life. They were starving.
It's not just for eating, it's for everything.
For school, for everything.
How old are you?
15.
I'm Mary, and we're just standing outside what we call now the Kids Cafe. It's a restaurant, safe space, where we're just giving them a space to play pool and hang out.
How many kids? I've seen your book that people are writing their names in. Literally, one little boy's just arrived. How many people in your book?
We've got about 230 in there, but that's just scratching the surface, really, because quite often kids come and we don't manage to grab them and get them to put their names in the book. Not easy to tell exactly. And the kids arriving every day.
The cricket's booming out of the cafe at the moment. What else do you do? Food, games? What sort of support?
When the kids arrive and normally come here, we try and find out who they're with, which community they're with, try and get them settled in as much as possible. If it's possible to get them in one of the containers, or just make sure they've got somewhere to stay. And then basically they'll probably come here for food every day, and then slowly when they get confidence, then they'll tell us, what they need and any problems that they have. We give them our telephone numbers, so if they have any particular problem, 24-hour, any time they phone us up. If they've been arrested, can we come and get them from the detention centre? If they've taken a lorry the wrong way, can we come and pick them up? If, anything, they'll call us.
So you've just written your name in the book?
Yeah.
You just arrived?
Yeah, I just arrived yesterday, day before yesterday.
How did you get here?
Very difficultly, by feet, by a car, but I arrived here.
From Afghanistan?
Yeah, from Afghanistan.
So how long did it take you?
Yeah, like 8-9 months. 8-9 months.
To come here?
Yeah.
So how do you feel?
Now, not good.
Not good.
Yeah. When I arrived to UK, then, yeah, perfectly.
So who sent you? Your mum sent you?
Yeah. My mom, my relative, all collect money for me and send me here.
And were you frightened? Were you scared when you left?
Yeah, still now. It's scary.
And what were you scared of?
Scared of the way, scared of leaving the family, scared of everything. Scared of far from the house. Here, like 15, 16 countries I pass and come here. When you go and trying to cross the border, the police, what the spraying in our eyes, and a lot of problems here. It's still scary.
So tonight, where will you sleep?
I don't have yet the tent, but I write my name there for a tent. They will bring it soon.
Are you tired?
Yeah.
They try every night. And is what they say, and which means trying. So the children are out trying to get into the backs of lorries to get to the UK. So that's one of our biggest nightmares, because this morning, I don't know if you heard about the Eritrean girl was killed this morning on the motorway.
The young girl?
19. She was, the latest to be hit by a lorry. And there's racist attacks, let alone the police, regularly violent towards children. They don't discriminate. Children rocking up at 3 o'clock in the morning after coming back from trying with quite severe tear gas. It's the handheld sprays. But we have
as far as you've seen, they're spraying in the faces of children?
100%. The injuries that we see, 100%, it's sprayed at close range. The other horrible thing is they spray it down their throats. So at close range, they use the canisters and it's sprayed straight into the mouth. Children as young as 11 I've witnessed returning with these kind of injuries.
On a bench outside the cafe sat one of the many refugees on crutches. This one, a teenage boy. Sorry?
Police, that night, shoot me, they put.
They shot you in the leg?
Yeah. One second.
A week after this, Mary went to hospital with a 15-year-old boy shot in the head with a rubber bullet. He ended up in intensive care.
They're out in the jungle. They're on their own. They're in the middle of this refugee site. There's no regulations. They have to fight for survival. If they have something nice, it probably get took off them by somebody else who's bigger. They cry a lot. They miss their mum. They've been through hell.
Where did you come from?
I'm from Afghanistan.
And how long in the jungle?
3 months.
Are you with your mother, father?
No.
So you're here by yourself? 3 brothers?
You 1, 8, next 9, me 12. Me go London, you police problem. Police no go London. Border close. No go London. You just stay here. Me no stay here. Me go London.
Can you ask me, do his little brothers go with him?
Here, his brother.
Try.
They're together trying.
Even the little one, the 9-year-old?
Yeah.
9 years old.
Yeah. Agay su kalandi.
Quite a few of them suffer nightmares. You know, they are cargo for these smugglers. They've been told it's a few hours across somewhere, and it turns out it's 3 days, and smugglers haven't supplied any water. A couple of the kids had said that people had died on the journey from literally exhaustion and dehydration. And the smugglers taking huge risks with these people, you know, that they will drive across a border, a kind of ram raid across a border by the sounds of it, and they are shot at. A lot of the kids talk about being put into cars, literally sort of shoved into a boot with numerous other people. Some of the kids talk about being sick whilst, you know, piled into a tiny space, so they're vomiting and just stuck in their own vomit. Obviously they're children, so they can get upset quite easily and not control their emotions, and the response by the smugglers, a lot of them say they got beaten to keep them quiet, or if they were upset they got beaten if they were crying. And one of the children was telling us that he was with some guys who stood up to the bandits who were stealing all their money and papers and jewellery and what have you, and the bandits cut the fingers off one of the blokes. So yeah, they've been party to a lot of trauma, and then arrive here, and you know, for a lot of them 8, 9, 10 months in this place trying to survive.
It's almost evening when I leave the camp, walking past the church, and a battered escort car comes slowly up the stony road in a cloud of dust. Inside is Mary from the children's cafe and 3 little boys.
I've got 3 very small boys who've just arrived on the camp. Were taken to the restaurant by an adult who's nothing to do with them, just took them there to show them. Now it's 6 o'clock, trying to find them somewhere safe to stay for the night. So going to the containers, seeing if there's in the official centre whether or not there'll be somewhere for them to stay. So.
And what's your estimate of their age with your expertise of Afghan boys?
I'd say 9 and 10.
Okay.
What is your name? How old are you?
8.
Yeah?
The next day at the cafe, it's lesson time. French for those resolved to stay, and English for those still trying.
I am 10 years.
Outside, it's chaos. Mary's 3 charges ran away from emergency care, and she's talking to a Red Cross official. So hold on a second, they're actually talking about
Because the official administrator ad hoc just walked out and said there was too much work, they just couldn't do it. So it's the Red Cross that have taken or are considering taking on the role to unblock the whole kind of...
So they would take on a kind of responsibility for all the under 18s?
Just so that whenever the kid has to go to court, or they have to go in front of a judge, or they have to sign any papers. But I mean, imagine the task that is. But at the moment, there's not anybody really doing it. So
Missing children, it's been a massive issue since we arrived. There's no registration, there's no kind of organised child protection going on. So we're all kind of winging it.
at the moment it's making my hair go grey, knowing that every night they're trying to get on lorries, they go all over the place. Well, things like that, you know, you just think, God, if my kids were, I would, you know, how can kids like that be taking on those responsibilities and facing those dangers? It's unthinkable, but it's happening every single day. So. I think I'm going to try and find these kids.
Okay.
Just so they don't,
I'll let you go and do what you need to do. Thank you.
I cannot even begin to understand that we're allowing this to happen. There are children who have no adult carers, who are living in conditions that are not acceptable for a dog, who are being exposed to brutality, violence. Nobody's making this up or being dramatic, it's real. Why aren't we acting?
Take me and move from here to
Catherine Carr learning about the lives of the children in the jungle migrant and refugee camp in Calais. We asked the Calais police for a statement, but they said they didn't want to comment. And since we visited the camp, a grassroots charity who work there, the Worldwide Tribe, said that police raided all cafes and premises cooking food on the site, including the kids' cafe. The cafe is now serving food prepared elsewhere. And we're told the boy who was hit in the head with a rubber bullet is better, and enough money has been raised to repatriate the body of the young Eritrean girl killed trying to make it to the UK. So to discuss the issues faced by unaccompanied children and women and mothers in the migrant and refugee camps, and to ask what's being done to help them and what more could be done, I'm joined in the studio by Lliana Bird, founder of Help Refugees, and by Ginny Howells, Save the Children's UK Emergencies Manager, and on the line from Lille by Daniel Barney of Médecins Sans Frontières. Daniel, I'm going to come to you first and ask you, why are these people in the jungle? Why are they trying to come to the UK instead of seeking asylum in France or countries they pass through?
Hi, thank you for having me on. A lot of these people in the jungle are stranded there. One, because their ultimate goal is trying to go to the UK. We have an enormous amount of people that already speak English. They have some language skills that clearly they don't have for the French language. A number of people, a large population of the people has family already in the UK. And they do have rights as far as family reunification goes. And they could, if the adequate services were put forth and put into place, take advantage of those rights, but we see authorities on both sides of the channel dragging their feet. And also, people do not want to stay in France because I think we can see from your report that they haven't necessarily been very well welcomed. Once they come here, they're shoved into these camps in between the barbed wire fences that the UK has funded to protect the ports going over to the UK. And on the other side, we have a dangerous situation with smugglers taking advantage of their vulnerable situation. And on all sides around the camp, you have riot police that are using sometimes excessive force and trying to keep people caged into this extremely uninhabitable and deplorable space.
Lliana, I'm going to come to you now. Why are there so many children on their own?
I think there's a variety of reasons. Our last census showed there were 608 unaccompanied children, and we expect that to go up significantly in our census that we're taking again this week. A lot of them are orphaned. A lot of them have come from countries where they were at great risk of recruitment by either ISIS or the Taliban or other such groups. So their parents or their families would have made the decision to send them away for their safety. A lot of them would have sold everything they had and raised what little money they could to send over their child, and perhaps they can't afford to send the rest of the family along with them. And of course, some of them will have lost family along the way as well.
In general, where have they come from? Can you divide their countries?
The majority of the children in the refugee camp in Calais, who are unaccompanied, are from Afghanistan, but there are a huge number of children from other areas too. You know, we see children from Syria, from Iraq, from Iran, and so many of them do have family in the UK. They have brothers, sisters, parents in some cases. So that is their goal, is to try and be reunited safely with their family.
Ginny, the so-called Dubs Amendment was included in the Immigration Act. What exactly does it propose?
That was an incredible decision by the UK government to offer sanctuary to children that are by themselves in Europe, in the UK, when it's in their best interest to do so. I think what we need now is to make sure that that is actually turned into action. So across kind of Europe, we need to make sure that states are actually able to protect the children, the unaccompanied children that are in there. We need to make sure that there's enough capacity in those systems to actually house the children, to get them everything they need. we need to make sure that on the UK side, we're actually ready to support the children that will come here. So that's making sure that councils have the appropriate resources and making sure that system really works.
Which so far, it's been 3 months now this week, and apparently only 20 have arrived under the scheme.
Well, actually, those 20 children are actually applicable under what's called Dublin 3. So they already did have the legal right to come here to reunite with their family. So what we'd hope to see is that the children that come under Dubs are children who are unaccompanied, who don't already have that legal right to be reunited with their family. So technically speaking, it's not working at all at the moment.
Who's looking after the children in these camps?
It is predominantly, and in fact it is totally being looked after by volunteers, by grassroots groups. Help Refugees are there. We are the primary aid givers. So in terms of providing clothes, we run a kitchen out of our warehouse as well. And we support people like Liz, who runs the Women and Children's Centre. We support the youth centre that's there as well. But it is grassroots and volunteer-led at the moment. And a lot of them simply don't have anyone looking after them, is the sad fact.
So we can assume that these children are vulnerable, but perhaps you can, expand on that, Ginny. How vulnerable are they?
Children in Calais are incredibly vulnerable. I mean, children across Europe who are by themselves are incredibly vulnerable. And we know that children are at risk of abuse and exploitation. We're seeing that in Italy. We're seeing children trapped in detention centres in Greece. And children in the camps in Calais, I mean, you've heard from that piece. They're exposed to violence. They're attempting to get onto the back of lorries. There's not enough food in the camps. They're incredibly vulnerable and we need to make sure that more is done to protect them.
So what you're saying is that it's all volunteer-led in those camps right now. Daniel, where are the other NGOs?
It's an extremely good question. Right now, there's no government organization or actor that really specializes in protection issues. Really taking a lead in the camp. And just to remind everybody that under French law, unaccompanied minors must be provided access to protection, lodging, healthcare, without question of their origin, period. If they're on French soil, they must be provided protection. And this isn't happening. Already we can attribute this to a lack of space in the French system. That was going to be the case without thousands and thousands of migrants coming over. It's an acute problem, but there hasn't been a response by French nor government UK authorities to actually address this problem. MSF has tried, along with all the other organizations within the camp, and we're all working together to try to put some sort of a system together. We've opened a youth center with other organizations, notably the Balous organization, which is a UK group, and we're really trying to offer some sort of psychological support. A lot of these kids are suffering from post-traumatic stress, depression, just a feeling of complete loss of control. They have no idea what tomorrow is going to look like. And it's extremely difficult to help them find some sort of path to get through the day and to continue on their journey if they want it, or even to take advantage of the rights that in Europe we're obliged to give them and to respect.
Daniel, thank you. Ginny, what are Save the Children doing there?
So Save the Children, along with Help Refugees and others, we're supporting the Refugee Youth Service, which is a youth centre in the camp, and it's run by absolutely incredible people. I was there visiting yesterday and we were talking to the children and they were saying that is the only safe space and they have in the camp. And they do activities and do outreach within the camp. And across kind of Europe, we're kind of working in Greece and Italy, in other places, to try and ensure that children are protected and that they've got access to their rights.
But essentially, because of bureaucracy, for want of a better word, you can't actually be there in force, can you?
So Save the Children's not a French NGO and we're not registered to work in France, which is why we're kind of partnering with people like Help Refugees who are doing an amazing job, like the Refugee Youth Service, to try and, as best as we can, support children. And I think the point that Daniel made is really important. It is the French states, as it is across Europe, it's the state's responsibility to protect these children.
Thank you so much to Lliana Bird, Ginny Hells and Daniel Barney. Still to come on today's Woman's Hour, the third part of our drama Tinsel Girl and the Big Reunion, and big news from the world of couture. The House of Dior has just appointed their first female creative director, or should that be only just appointed a female creative director? How significant is that? And don't forget, if you've missed anything or want to hear a programme again, you can. Just head to the Woman's Hour website and download our free podcast. What you're hearing is the National Youth Orchestra of Great Britain performing Holst's Jupiter from the Planets at Leeds Town Hall in 2013. And this Saturday, the 6th of August, the Royal Albert Hall plays host to them for Prom 29. Edward Gardner will be conducting them as they perform the Planets and also Strauss's Also sprach Zarathustra. Sarah Alexander is the Chief Executive and Artistic Director of the National Youth Orchestra, and she's in the studio with me now. Good morning to you, Sarah. What's the inspiration behind this year's prom?
Good morning. The first inspiration is always the teenagers in the orchestra. So we have 164 young people from towns and villages across the UK, and we're thinking about what are they going to play that's going to express who they are. And so we have a combination of some extraordinary masterworks of symphonic repertoire, Holst's Planets and also Strauss' Zarathustra. But these are masterworks that have been played by many orchestras. So we're thinking about how can we give a lens so that we see 21st century teenagers taking on these great masterworks. And that's where we started to think about how we would connect the pieces of work through a scientific theme. And we commissioned a piece about gravitational waves to bring the whole thing together. And we also have asked Colin Matthews if we can play his Pluto at the end of the programme, so that we have at the beginning and end of the programme living composers.
So what's the story behind the commissioning of Gravitational Waves? That is incidentally by German composer Iris der Schipphorst.
Really the thinking is about sort of what's in the zeitgeist. How are we going to bring the world into the concert hall?
Because Gravitational Waves was quite a discovery, wasn't it?
It's an extraordinary discovery, and it's wonderful for the National Youth Orchestra for two reasons, really. It's something that's absolutely now. It's also a way of hearing the universe. So before we actually detected these gravitational waves, the black holes were they were silent. Or they were a calm space. And now we know that there's a lot of noise going on. And I also find it fascinating that it's noise it sounds now that are coming from 1.3 billion years ago, and yet they're contemporary to us now. And I think that's also interesting about orchestral music, that much of what we play is repertoire with tradition, and it's from the past. But National Youth Orchestra, in a way, they make it now because they're young and they're playing it now for the first time.
And how diverse is the range of backgrounds for those teenagers in the orchestra?
Yeah, it's such an important question, isn't it? They are literally from all over the UK, including Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And they have many different backgrounds. The key thing that we're noticing is around educational background. That's something which is very particular to the National Youth Orchestra. We have, in the country as a whole, 7% of young people in independent schools. In the National Youth Orchestra, it's more around half of the orchestra from independent schools.
And also almost half look like they're girls.
We have half girls, absolutely, and girls do very well in leadership positions in the National Youth Orchestra. We have a big programme called our Inspire programme, which is about encouraging young people from state schools to see that National Youth Orchestra can be for them, and also to help them progress to get to that level.
Well, it's interesting because in recent years we've seen funding cuts in the arts, and its place in our schools has come into question. How does the National Youth Orchestra go forward with cuts like that?
Well, our Inspire programme is a response to that, really. It's a response to seeing that young people in state education aren't perhaps getting the intensity of experience and the progression routes that young people in other schools who fund music education might have. So we have a kind of cascade. So members of the National Youth Orchestra all work with us beyond the concert platform, 5 to 10 days a year, over 1,000 days this year, in running workshops to encourage other young musicians to progress.
And you've worked with age ranges, all sorts of people in your career. What is it about the younger generation that makes you want to work alongside them?
What's so exciting about the National Youth Orchestra is that you have got young people who are talented, but they're so committed and they're so passionate and they're so open to what the future might be. So, orchestral music is a wonderful and exciting thing, but it needs to be taken forward by them. So I'm excited to charge them with that responsibility, and that's a responsibility to lead others, to teach, to communicate their passion, to play brilliantly on the concert platform, but also off the platform in schools and youth centres, and to basically to take on new ideas and to do something with their art form in the future.
And Sarah, For people not able to attend on Saturday, how can we see and hear the National Youth Orchestra do Prom 29?
Well, we're doing an amazing live stream with the BBC Proms team, and it's the first. I think they're excited about what NYO can offer to teenage audiences. So please do tune into the live stream through the iPlayer, or you can try and get a last-minute ticket for the prom, or you could come to Birmingham Symphony Hall on Friday night. So if you're a young person out there and you love music, then please do look at our website and please do apply for Inspire Opportunities or for the National Youth Orchestra. We want our orchestra to represent the nation's teenagers.
Sarah Alexander, thank you so much. To all things sartorial now, and huge news from the world of fashion. The House of Dior has hired Maria Grazia Chiuri to be their first female creative director in the 70-year history. To discuss how sadly significant this appointment is and to ask, do the big fashion houses still matter? I'm joined in the studio by fashion historian and academic Amber Butchart and Bethan Holt, digital fashion editor at The Telegraph. So, Bethan, let me begin with you. Who is Maria Grazia Chiuri?
So Maria Grazia is an Italian designer, and since 1999 she has been at Valentino. And she's been working in partnership with a guy called Pier Paolo Piccioli. And when Valentino retired in the late 2000s, Maria and Pier Paolo sort of took over, and they have just been really successful at Valentino. They've created, I mean, if you've seen any of these gorgeous, really long floor-sweeping dresses, they're responsible for that. They've really increased sales at the house. And
they famously gave Valentino a whole fresh look, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose one of the most recognisable things, if you're not a big follower of fashion, if you've seen any bags covered in studs or any shoes covered in studs over the last few years, then their rock stud collection is what's responsible for that. And yeah, really increased sales for the house.
So she's now with Dior. Amber, how important is the House of Dior? Can I just say, Amber, you look like you've walked off the pages of a magazine.
Oh, thanks very much. Well, I wanted to go with a sort of 40s style today because of the House of Dior, really, which was absolutely instrumental in the late 1940s in re-establishing Paris as the centre of couture in the post-war era. So there's this incredible legacy that you have with the House of Dior. Dior himself, his first collection was shown in 1947, called the Carole line. It was very quickly dubbed the new look by journalists, and it marked a really distinct break from the more sort of austere, boxy military styles that had been seen during the Second World War. It was a return to what was seen as sort of really traditional romantic femininity, an almost Victorian hourglass shape, which then dominated the 1950s. That classic 1950s hourglass silhouette that we think of was really all sort of due to Dior and his importance at that time.
And Bethan, the House of Dior's had a bit of a turbulent time recently, financially, and then, of course, with the highly publicised sacking of John Galliano. Can you just tell us briefly who he was and what happened?
Yeah, so John Galliano is a British designer, and he was appointed at Dior in 1996, I think it was. And I mean, he just became really famous for these incredibly flamboyant, beautiful collections, really fantastical. He was actually arrested in 2011 after he was found to have made some anti-Semitic comments in a bar in Paris and was subsequently sacked from Dior. So after this, long period with Galliano at the helm and a very distinctive sort of look for the house, they spent around a year looking for a new creative director, and then they appointed Raf Simons, who then just stayed for 3 years, and he then left last year, saying that it was such a high pressure job. So yeah, it's quite it's been quite a time for Dior.
And now we have Maria Grazia at the helm. So what does a creative director actually do?
Well, they do different things at different houses, but her main responsibility will be for creating the haute couture collections, which is twice a year, and though the clients will be able to come to those shows and order their bespoke creations from the catwalk. There'll also be ready-to-wear collections 4 times a year, handbags to create, shoes to create, jewellery to oversee. It's a huge job. It's such a huge company. So.
And Amber, how did Paris and French houses in general become this sort of height for all fashion?
Well, you can really trace the relationship between Paris and the couture industry back to the 17th century with Louis XIV, the Sun King. He was absolutely instrumental. It was a key economic policy of his to develop this industry in France and in Paris. So we really have him to thank for this longevity and this association of this very highly skilled artisan craftsmanship that we have with Parisian couture. Another key moment in its development was in the 1860s, a British man called Charles Frederick Worth was working in Paris. And he's a man who is often credited as being really one of the first couturiers in the way that we think of the couture system now. So he designed seasonal collections. He often showed them on live models. And he was quite instrumental in terms of dictating what was seen as good taste or what was seen as on trend. So sort of setting in motion the system that we still have to this day.
But, I mean, this is the interesting thing. For all the haute couture great news this may be, how does this really affect me? How does this affect somebody going on to their high street to buy their clothes? Bethan?
Well, I think there's been a huge amount of conversation in fashion recently about the rise of women designers. There's this designer called Phoebe Philo who has been responsible for all that incredible just sort of tailoring, white trainers. Like, we're all wearing white trainers now. Partly that's
I'm wearing wedges actually.
Oh well, there you go. But there's all these women designers, Stella McCartney, Victoria Beckham, who've come up and they're just doing clothes that really work for women's lives, and that's something that Sydney Toledano, who's the chief executive of Dior, has said about Maria Grazia. He wants to focus on clothes that really work for women, and that what she creates on the catwalk will undoubtedly influence everything that you see in the shops. So it will definitely be affecting all our wardrobes at some point in the future, whether you shop at Dior or not.
So this is a significant appointment then?
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
I do agree. And I also think outside of our sort of own shopping habits, it's important to see women in positions of power as well, and creative power. Whether it's a woman running a presidential campaign, whether it's a woman leading a country, or whether it's a woman as the creative director of a hugely important French fashion house. I think that is a very important step forward.
Amber and Bethan, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
That was Amber Bouchard. You've been tweeting us about our reports from Calais today. Nuala says outstanding reporting from the jungle this week, and Jackie Morris says heartbreaking listening to Woman's Hour talking of migrant children alone in the world. Sarah Pinder says it's compulsory listening and I feel ashamed that this is still happening. Miles Corbett says the inhumanity of those with power over the vulnerable is shameful. Governments do nothing. The discussions on child refugees on the World Service during the night and now on Woman's Hour are making me so angry and upset. That came from Kathleen Langley. And Preetha Bardhan says, 608 unaccompanied refugee children living in the Calais jungle. Shameful. What is the international community doing? And Kaya says, brilliant report on refugee children in Calais, truthful and disturbing, yet approached in a compassionate and humane manner. And Penny adds, good news feature on Woman's Hour on the situation for unaccompanied minors in the jungle. Politicians' promises so far have made no difference at all, not a jot. Join Jenny for tomorrow's Woman's Hour when we'll hear about New Zealand's prostitution legalisation. In June 2003, New Zealand became the first country in the world to decriminalise sex work. We hear from one woman who campaigned for the change, who says it hasn't actually offered women who worked in the sex trade greater autonomy and greater protection, and greater protection, and greater protection, and greater protection, and greater protection.